What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot of breaking news to kind of talk to you about. We have an enhanced risk for Day 3 issued for parts of Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and even a little bit of Texas. And we have a lot more to talk about as well, because this is looking like this has the possibility of being a very bad severe weather outbreak, especially for that region as well as in parts of Illinois, maybe even as east as Indiana and into Ohio. And we're going to discuss the meteorology of it and the impacts of it. So here's the situation that we have right here for you right now. This is an enhanced risk issued for Missouri, Arkansas, and Oklahoma, including just west of St. Louis, Jefferson City, Springfield, Tulsa, outside of OKC, and Norman right there, affecting 5 million people at this current point in time. The slight risk goes from the Indiana-Ohio border all the way down to Waco, Texas. 21 million additional people are going to be affected by it, including DFW, Indianapolis, Kansas City, and Arlington. So that's something we'll have to pay attention to as we continue to take a look at this. And here's the latest we have from the SPC, and this is their wording and not mine. A widespread severe threat is expected on Monday and Monday night for parts of the Southern Plains eastward into the mid-Mississippi Valley. All hazards, including large hail, wind damage, and tornadoes, will be possible. The severe threat is expected to impact parts of the Ohio Valley Monday night. That's what we have going on. Essentially, the meteorology we have going on surrounding it is we have a very powerful jet. I was talking to Fire Ant and a few other guys on Storms United, and we were kind of talking about some stuff that was going to be going on. So here's what we have going on right now. We have a jet to pay attention to. Now, this is a positively tilted jet from what I've looked at. However, in my conversation this morning, this appears to be one of those few times where a positively tilted jet is going to essentially lead to a potential worst case scenario situation, according to what I have heard. There is a subtle negative tilt around the Baja California area right there, as well as in parts of the Gulf of Mexico, and there is some divergence going on. What a divergence essentially does is it allows the moist air to kind of just fill into the upper levels of the atmosphere and kind of help initiate all of the severe weather that might be happening. That's the layman's terms version of it right there. But back to the jet itself, we're looking at winds of around 100 knots in a few areas. We're looking at a few jet streaks of winds of 100 knots in parts of this, and this is for 7 p.m. on Monday right there. We have a larger jet streak for parts of western Texas, but they aren't expected to be getting any severe weather. But at this current point, the setup, though, is definitely there for parts of Arkansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, and even into Illinois and Indiana, as we're seeing wind speeds exceeding 75 knots in the jet right there. And one thing I want to pay attention to, too, is the relative humidity in all these levels, because you're probably saying, oh, Patrick, you're talking about the jet and everything like that again. We don't understand what the hell's going on. What should we be paying attention to with the meteorology? Well, here's one thing you absolutely should pay attention to. What we have is relative humidity right there. That's just how much moisture we have in the atmosphere for all this. And essentially, what we have going on is that the higher up you go, typically, the less moist and more dry the atmosphere is. But in this case, at 250 millibars, which is, I believe, about 12 to 13 kilometers into the atmosphere, we're seeing relative humidities close to 70% right there. That is insanely moist for that high of an upper level right there. Just to give you some context right there, you do not typically see this much moisture this high up. Now, you could definitely see this at like 700 or stuff like that regularly, but not at 250. And at 500, the relative humidity gets even larger in some of these areas right there. In the severe threat area at 500 millibars, we're looking at areas cracking 90% in relative humidity right there, which is absolutely crazy for this kind of level right there. And this is why we're so concerned about what we're looking at. Now at the 700 area right there, relative humidity, there is some a little bit of more dry stuff going on around that general area, but that little bit of dry area could help initiate those thunderstorms just because of mixing and everything like that. So we'll have to pay attention to it. But another thing that we're paying attention to is kind of like the ThetaE, the potential temperature that's going on. Essentially, theoretically, how warm could this get? This isn't actual, this is just theoretical right there, but it just kind of is an indicator of how much energy is in the atmosphere. So we're looking at around 335 to 340 Kelvin, which is equivalent to about 62 to 67 degrees Celsius, which is, again, if you do the math right there, equivalent to about 140, 150 degrees Fahrenheit, which that is quite warm. That's not the actual temperature. If that was the case, that would be very, very bad news. But that's just kind of an indicator of how much moisture and how much kind of fuel this environment does have. Now, if we go ahead and show you the dew point temperatures at the surface around 1 p.m. on that day right here, we're looking at dew point temperatures in the mid to upper 60s across a lot of these regions right there, which, if you take into account the temperature, which we're looking at anywhere from like mid to upper mid 60s to upper 70s across a lot of these regions, that is very moist, and that is going to drive in a lot of this temperatures. That's going to drive in a lot of the severe weather right there. Now you're probably going, "Oh, Patrick, man, you're talking about this the meteorology again. We don't understand what you're saying. We get the relative humidity stuff. What are the impacts we are looking at?" Well, I'm glad you asked, because now we're going to go ahead and get to the convective part of this. This is the most unstable cape and shear right there for 1 p.m. right there. What I've noticed over the last couple of runs is we're seeing this massive fire up right here of Cape in southern Illinois and southern Indiana. This isn't just the NAM doing it. The RAP is also showing some signs of that happening as well. We're starting to see some more Capes starting to fire up in Illinois, Indiana, and parts of Kentucky over there. What that potentially could do is enhance more of a supercell-based event over there, although I do expect some supercells. In fact, we can actually go ahead and pull up pivotal weather right here. This is the HRW FV3 model that we have pulled up. This is just one model run right here, but I do want to go ahead and show you kind of like the radar we're looking at. We have cells starting to initiate in the afternoon of April 1st right there, starting around hour 53 is when we should be paying attention right there. So that's what we have. We have some stuff starting to initiate a little bit. Then we have stuff starting to, like, we have one supercell. Then we have multiple cells starting to fire up across Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, all those areas. And those supercells do look like they are going to be somewhat discrete for a rather long period of time, which that is going to be a bit of a problem because that can enhance your tornado threat right there. Let's go ahead and pull up a sounding and see what the shear values are for a lot of these areas right here. I want to go ahead and pluck a sounding around. Let's say around 21Z in Oklahoma right here, around 0Z region right here. We're going to pull one from near Tulsa, and we're going to pull another one in southern Indiana to kind of compare and contrast what the threats could be right there. So that way you have an understanding. This is for Tulsa right here. First of all, the lapse rates that I'm looking at have been quite extreme. We're looking at a lapse rate of around 9.6 degrees Celsius per kilometer for a lot of these regions. I've seen other runs. This one's around 8.4. And for those of you who do not know, that is quite a lot of that is a large lapse rate. Excuse me for stammering right there. But yeah, it's quite impressive. And what that essentially means is that this atmosphere is almost absolutely unstable, and that is definitely going to it's not going to help with the severe weather threat, to say the very least. But here's what the Cape looks like, 1200 Cape. The shear is what I'm paying attention to. 17 knots of shear near Tulsa, Oklahoma. SRH values around 128 at surface to 1 kilometer. That could cause maybe a little bit of a weak tornado to happen, just like this potential hazard type is saying. But because the shear is not very good at 1 kilometer at this current model run, I wouldn't say there's going to be a particularly large tornado threat. What I am concerned about, though, is 80 knots of shear at surface to 6 kilometers. What that essentially can do right there, we can go ahead and pull this up. What that essentially can do is it can help whatever supercell fires up in the atmosphere. What that can do is essentially, because of that shear, it'll really help with the updraft. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, let me explain it this way. If you want large hailstones, you need a larger updraft. And if you need a larger updraft, you need more shear at 6 kilometers. 80 knots of shear at 6 kilometers is really good for extremely large hail. And that's what I think the main threat is going to be, that and a tornado threat. Although I have talked to Fire Ant, I have talked to my guys at Storms United, they think it's going to be a mix of everything. I can see that as well, but as of right now, based off of the data I am looking at right now, I still think a tornado and hail threat are the biggest threats, although we need to take a look at the wind threat as more data continues to come in. And this is the reason why I think the hail threat's going to be the biggest right here, especially in Oklahoma and that region right there, because of that surface to 6 kilometer wind shear right there. 80 knots of that is enough to cause potential as the way I'll put it is this. A difference of 10 knots of wind shear at that level can mean the difference between 2-inch hail and 3-inch hail. That's what I'll say right there as we continue to do that. Continue to look at this. Let's go ahead and look at the one we're looking at for Indianapolis over there. We have a lower, we do have a lower lapse rate, but we do have a more directional shear going on with this, and we do have a more potential threat for tornadoes, as we have a 1400 cape right there, which for March in southern Indiana is okay, but we're looking at shear around 20 knots at 1 kilometer, 68 knots at 6 kilometers. That's going to definitely enhance your supercell and hail risk right there, for especially in parts of southern Illinois, southern Indiana, that region over there. And that's why I'm concerned about this whole cape profile just starting to fire up right there, because that could help enhance the impacts. Now, there's a few things I need to say going into kind of like the last couple of minutes of this video. Number one, do not panic about everything I just said about this, all right? I know there are some people in the comments section that are a little bit worried about the tornado threat and everything like that. Let me just say this. Do not panic. There's a lot of unknowns that we still need to figure out. We're not even 100% sure if this is going to generate a tornado threat or not. This is just off the latest data we have. But the data that we do have is indicating something potentially pretty bad could happen, especially for Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri. And with that being said, no matter where you are in this risk, just prepare for something. Just prepare for the worst and hope for the best. That's pretty much the best advice I can give right there, but do it in a calm and orderly fashion. We do not want to panic anyone here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, we are going to close the video out right here. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a like, and as always, subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps us out, helps us make more videos like these. The goal of this channel, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. And if you want to come ask me some more questions about the severe weather threat, or just kind of help out with what we're looking at, be sure to join the Storms United Discord server. The link to that is right over there. But with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.